of work to do. Discrepancies in pay, facilities, and even media coverage have exposed an undercurrent of sexism that still exists in athletics and society at large. But we still have a lot to celebrate because year after year we trend towards less firsts, and hopefully one day there will be no more glass ceilings to break. Today's show is women-led, both in front and behind the camera, which actually and thankfully is not that rare at ESPN. We're going to speak with Elana Meyers Taylor, the most decorated Black Winter Olympic athlete, Candice Story Lee, one of 5 female athletic directors in the Power 5 conferences, and we'll be joined by a special musical guest. But first, we go back 50 years to 1972, when Title IX, the law that paved the way for so many, was spearheaded by Bernice Sandler.
Look around and see all we have now. All these things are because of Bernice. In 1969, at the age of 41, Bernice Sandler was teaching part-time while getting her doctorate at the University of Maryland. She applied for numerous full-time teaching positions and was repeatedly turned down.
They didn't even think of me. A man on the faculty was a friend of mine, answered, "Well, let's face it, you come on too strong for a woman." And that's what turned me around.
Her husband told her that kind of rejection is sex discrimination. Those words motivated Bernice to act. She started digging for information. From admissions and hiring to athletics, she found problems.
University of Michigan at that point in the early 1970s had a budget of over $1 million for men's varsity athletics. Now, what do you think the budget was for women's varsity athletics? There was no budget, it was zero.
Her research uncovered an executive order forbidding sex discrimination by institutions with federal funding, which included most universities. Armed with that order, Bernice led a historic class action suit on behalf of all women in higher education. She filed complaints against hundreds of schools. Her records became Title IX.
Title IX is probably the most important law ever passed for women and girls in the United States since we got the right to vote in 1920.
Because of Bernice, millions of women have competed in college athletics since 1972. Through the years, they've provided many magnificent moments. And because of Bernice, there will be many more to come.
This year marks the 50th anniversary of the passage of Title IX, which has obviously impacted college sports in a major way, even though athletics are not specifically mentioned in the law. Our first guest is a former college basketball player and one of only 5 female athletic directors in the Power 5 conferences. 50 years ago, this might have seemed impossible, but to Candice Story Lee, impossible is nothing. Now it's time for our Impossible is Nothing interview presented by Adidas, and we welcome in Vanderbilt AD Candice Story Lee. So happy to have you here and to talk to you again. You are Vanderbilt's first female athletic director and the first female AD in the SEC. When you were growing up, was this something that you envisioned for your life?
You know, I don't know that I knew that I would be an AD, but I did come from very blessed to grow up in a family where I was told every day that I could be anything. And I watched my parents set that example for us. And I married a wonderful man who encouraged me throughout my career. And I played for great coaches who, taught us to aspire to new heights. So I didn't know that I'd be an AD, but I do have to say, even in my first year in administration at Vanderbilt, I had the good fortune of seeing Bev Lewis, who was overseeing women's athletics at Arkansas, and Joan Cronin at Tennessee, and sat in the room with Carla Williams before we had our opportunity. So, I did know, I was able to see that those models were before me. So
that's certainly very important. And I was a student athlete. You played basketball at Vandy. And I can tell you that since I was in college, a lot has changed. Since your experience as a student athlete, how much has changed at Vandy?
So in some ways, I would say that in the best ways, things have not changed. So we are high academics, playing in the best conference in the country. Nashville was probably more of a regional city when I first got here, but that has certainly changed. But I would say in those ways, like, things have stayed the same. The changes have come where we've seen just so many more opportunities for women, and Vanderbilt has a history of trailblazing and pioneering in a number of ways. So I would say that the things that drew me to Vanderbilt are still the things that keep me here, but we do have an opportunity to reimagine. And it's been great to be a part of that.
You talk about Vandy trailblazing in a lot of ways. Sarah Fuller became the first woman to play in a Power 5 conference for a football team. This is obviously a huge deal, and you were a part of that. That was in 2020. That was your first year as an AD. What went into the process of allowing her to play in a football game?
So this is, I'm proud to say that it was not this, it turned out to be a transformative time. And of course, what Sarah did was amazing, but it was pretty commonplace here in that we had a need on our football team, and a student athlete stepped forward to do what the team needed her to do. It's really that simple. In terms of the role that I played, I didn't play a role. Derek Mason, who was our football coach at the time, he casually stopped by and said that we all know that in 2020, COVID was wreaking havoc within our programs, and we were down in numbers, and the soccer team had just won the SEC championship, and he said, I think she's going to try out. I mean, it wasn't even a meeting. It was a conversation in passing. That was a Monday or a Tuesday, and quite frankly, the only thing I said was check with compliance, make sure we're fine. Didn't think about it again. It did not cross my mind how monumental it was until I got off the plane at Missouri and saw her getting off the plane too. And I don't mean to, that's important, because it's not that it wasn't an important time, but we weren't doing it to make waves. We don't do things to make waves. We do things that we think are right. And if transformation occurs as a part of it, then so be it. But that was a young person who stepped up when we needed her to. And I would say she had the right attitude. One might call it courage to break the status quo. I would say she was just determined and felt compelled to make a difference. And that's what she did.
I love that. It's not even that big of a deal, because as you know, it is a big deal for her to be playing for a football team. But
Sure.
Like you said, it is the right thing to do. I want to talk about Vandy for a little bit, because Vandy has undergone a lot of changes since you've been there. What is your vision for the future at Vanderbilt?
So it's actually pretty simple for us to reach our potential. And I would say that given the unique circumstances that we have a chance to do something that's never been done. And so we are, a world-renowned institution. We are in what I believe is the best city in the country. Oh, man, I'm getting distracted looking at these highlights. That's been a long time. And we're charter members of the best conference in college athletics. And, I think that one of the things that makes us special, we only have 16 sports. We have 350 student athletes, so we're a pretty small community. And we're able to give individualized attention to each person that comes in our space. And if we give them the resources that they need to succeed, and by succeed, we mean win at everything, including on the fields of play. I keep using the word transformation because that's what it is. That's what Vanderbilt did for me. And I feel like it's my responsibility to do that for everyone else that comes in our midst, not just student athletes, but alums, staff, faculty, our community. We want to be the best at all of the things that matter.
I love that. And I also want to go back to those highlights, because you look like you haven't aged a day. You look exactly the same.
Oh, bless you. I don't know if it's a filter, but thank you.
No problem. So when you were young, when you were playing basketball, obviously there were a lot of people that you looked up to, like you mentioned. If you were to give advice to younger women today, what would you say?
I think we're celebrating 50 years of Title IX, right? Which means that we have an opportunity to celebrate how far we've come, but we also recognize that we have a long way to go. And so in that journey, some of the progress that still needs to be made is that we have to make sure that young girls, that young women know that they really can be anything. I was fortunate to have that experience, but I understand that that's not the case with everyone. Because right now we're talking about navigating a space in a world that really wasn't created for us. And so there are these messages that girls get that say, this is not your space. Well, we have to tell them that it is. We have to tell them that it is. And I was going to a meeting the other day, and I was just in the elevator, and there were these facts in the elevator. And one of them said, 1 in 3 girls doesn't want to be a leader for fear that people will think she's bossy. That means that we are using the wrong language, right? We're not using empowering language around girls so that they crave the opportunity to lead. So we still have work to do. So my advice is to make sure that we're encouraging girls to be anything that they want and then giving them the resources to do so.
I love that. And definitely, obviously, following in your footsteps, you are a picture of what a lot of women are looking at, and they can take after your example, for sure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
I think my favorite part about being a woman in sports is the other women in sports. You know, this community that we find ourselves in, this sisterhood. I believe there's this sort of preconceived notion that, you know, women can't work together, there's cattiness or pettiness, infighting, and I just have not found that to be true at all, not in my experience. I have been surrounded by women who uplift and help and encourage and root you on, and honestly, it's my favorite part of my job is just being a part of a very small group of women who know exactly what it's like to be in your shoes.
In January, we lost a basketball pioneer. Hall of Famer Lucia Harris won 3 straight national championships at Delta State. She was the only woman to be officially drafted by an NBA team. And in 1976, she became the first woman to score in Olympic basketball history. Here's her story.
I believe Ann Myers said, do you realize you made history? And I said, what are you talking about? She said, you scored the first basket in women's Olympics. Yeah, a record that will never be broken. Yeah, will always be. Got a chance to travel with the Olympic team. That was unreal. Coach McCool, the athletic director at Delta State, had asked me did I want to be a part of the Olympic team. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, you have to go to tryouts. Oh, there were about 150 people there, and they had narrowed it down to 12. It was nice, though, to compete against other players and girls of my height. So when I got to tryouts, surprise, there were a lot of people there who were 6'3", and I had to learn to compete with them. And competition was pretty tough. All these people are in the stands, everybody's cheering, and you're getting this medal placed around your neck, and you're saying, my medal. This is my medal. Nobody really, even the people in the United States really did not expect the women team to do as well. We wanted to prove that, women could play basketball too. And we proved that point. We won a silver medal.
Lucia Harris paved the way for the modern generation of women's basketball players, including Chiney Ogwumike, who is not only a 2-time WNBA All-Star, but she's also a full-time basketball analyst for us here at ESPN. I caught up with her earlier this week. Thanks so much for joining us, Chiney. And you're very unique to this conversation because you're not only an athlete, but you're also an NBA analyst, a commentator. You work for ESPN. You're one of the most busy people at this company. So thank you so much for joining us. And I want to start with the W because there was a story that just came out in Sports Illustrated about the Liberty and the fact that they're getting fined for chartering flights. Obviously, a lot of people have a lot of opinions on this. How do you feel like the WNBA handled this situation?
Well, first and foremost, it's an interesting sequence of events. And I think our commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, has done a great job of navigating, the seas of, relationships with players. But this might be, an interesting inflection point, largely because we got the CBA done. We had to run it back and have a lot of negotiations with the W and Kathy for the bubble season. We're out of that. We're in a great place. She announced a $75 million investment. And then right after that, now we're hearing about the realities. I think the hardest thing for us to digest is we got huge investment in the WNBA, $75 million, and none of that, based on my knowledge, is that it's going to touch the player experience. There are certain standards of travel, of accommodation, of practice facilities, of arena capabilities that we want to really fix as players. And I know a lot of people also say, like, hey, the CBA was agreed to. right? That is true. And it was a groundbreaking CBA. That doesn't mean that we can't take the adequate steps to hopefully address some of these issues if the potentials are there. Oftentimes with the WNBA and, issues with women in basketball, people want to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe they have to deal with that. That's the headline instead of the progress and also creating solutions. But I do think in order to advocate for our game, we need to have people respect our game, and it starts with the treatment of players.
Yeah, I totally agree. And obviously you're friends with Liz Cambage, and she just was very vocal about the fact that throughout the entire season, she was paying for upgrades because she's 6'8". She can't sit.
And it's not just Liz, it's Brittany Griner. Shoot, you girl over here, I'm 6'3".
Right.
And you know what's crazy? Nneka's like 6'1". And every time we get on a plane, she's like, Chiney, this one has more legroom, take my ticket. You're having my sister, who's a former MVP, giving me her seat.
Let's move to another side of the game and just being a woman in sports in general. Sydney Carter, she's a player development coach at Texas A&M. She just got a lot of flack for looking fly on the sideline. Like, girl, she kills it every single day. Have you ever, as a woman in sports, dealt with that kind of thing?
Absolutely. I always say that sometimes as a woman in sport, especially in a sport that's constantly compared to the men, like basketball, our existence is the resistance, right? So sometimes a lot of times we feel like we have to go out and be champions with our words, you should come to a game, like we're hitting the ground, we're hitting the pavement trying to get fans because we know what the truth is. Sometimes just existing is triggering for some people. When it comes to women, I feel like people don't understand that, especially being young women, particularly young Black women, our expression looks different, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. Sometimes our fashion choices are different or unexpected. We're just now highlighting a lot of unique, diverse fashion artists. They've come on the scene because of the situations and circumstances that the past few years the world has presented. I just been really proud of her just owning her own self, her expression, and still doing a great job, because that's one thing. People want to talk about what we're wearing and not what we're doing, and it should be reversed.
You are one of the first female NBA analysts in the game, right? You paved the way for a lot of people to kind of do and follow in your footsteps, which is crazy to say because you're young, like you're still coming up, you're still on the come up, but you still did pave the way for a lot of people. Is this what you expected in your career?
Not at all. None. By going to Stanford and seeing that sports is powerful, then going into the professional ranks and realizing after my injuries that you can't play forever, I became a yes woman, say yes to opportunities. And I think there's a lot of pressure for, being a woman in a seat, because when you make a mistake, it's magnified because, she's talking about the NBA. She's never played in the NBA. So it's double whammy, right? So the pressure's on us. And I think that's why women consistently deliver and are multiplying now, because you start seeing that our standard is based on society's expectation of us, not necessarily, on the surface level, maybe seeing us as in a position to succeed, because it's like, oh, you can quickly go to this reason, that reason why you should be negated. And so that's the secret sauce. We know what's at stake every time we step in front of a microphone. We know that magnifying glass of, oh, did she say this, is right up there. And so I've just been very grateful. And I guess my unique space, Christine, is being an active player and doing this. It was a grind at first for me to find this opportunity, but I had multiple of women say go for it. I had Lisa Stokes at ESPN, who was one of the talent bookers. I had Jill Fredrickson, who one of the Sports Center producer, and then of course, allies and Dave Roberts and Jimmy Pitaro, who said, she comes correct with information, she's entertaining, and why not? There should be opportunities. And since then, we come in, hopefully we deliver, and then the floodgates are open.
And I remember you told me about how when you played for the Sun and you were going to practice, driving up to Bristol so that you could do it. It's been a grind, and you've handled it extremely great.
Hey, Christine, where am I now though?
LA. I don't know how you do it.
We made it, sis.
Exactly. We out here. I actually want to talk about that. Like, what are you most excited about when it comes to this upcoming Spark season?
Being healthy. I think the hardest thing is things have been going great for me in broadcast, and it's been fun. And the hardest thing is I love playing the game of basketball, and my health has been hampered the past 2 years just based on coming out of the pandemic. We didn't have as many resources because we're stuck at home, and then trying to address some of the things that were issues before, but then the season's coming and then you got to play, and then those things weren't addressed. So long story short, being healthy and being able to be out there on the floor in a jersey for my team and competing for number one, a chance to win a championship with my big sis NECA.
I'm gonna be out in LA for that. Don't even worry about it. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Janae. It's been fun.
Absolutely. Love you, girl. Keep doing your thing.
So, why did I pursue a career in sports? Well, it was the only thing I ever dreamt of doing since I was in middle school. And, I often get asked what it's like being in a male-dominated industry. And while there's still a lot of ground to make up, I dreamt of covering sports because I saw women like Pam Oliver, Linda Cohn, Andrea Kramer, Erin Andrews, hosting, reporting on the field. And I was only convinced it was a possibility for me. I grew up an athlete, learned some of the biggest life lessons because of sports, and I think a lot of that I applied to pursuing a career in sports. So what does it mean being a woman in sports? It means I'm living my dream. And I think it means I'm broadening the scope for other little girls to see themselves in this position too one day. And by then, maybe they won't be asked the question, what is it like being in a male-dominated industry?
In 1973, Billie Jean King led the equal pay fight at the U.S. Open. Over 30 years later, Venus Williams picked up the torch to lead the exact same fight at Wimbledon. Here's her story.
Tennis is the rare sport where men and women play together on the same stage, same television contract, the same ticket price.
The degree of the discrepancy between how much prize money women won at Wimbledon as opposed to men was deeply offensive.
I don't think it's fair. I feel that tennis is a premier sport for women, so we have to set an example here.
I had a meeting of the top 10 players and said to them, guys, if we're going to get women's tennis to equal prize money, it's going to require your involvement.
He wanted a top player to go to the Grand Slam committee meeting.
Venus was the first one in the room to say, I'll do it.
So I got in there, I said, everyone close your eyes.
She says, now I'd like you to imagine being a young girl growing up that's got dreams and aspirations, and then one day someone tells you there's a limit. There's a limit to what you can achieve because of your gender.
The 2005 final was just a testament to amazing women's tennis and another reason for equal prize money.
That's when I officially heard from them that they were not going to pay equal prize money in 2006.
I'm ready to fight some more. Let's get another game plan. What are we going to do next?
Campaign to try to secure equal pay for women tennis players gets underway this week with the backing of many top players.
This was a multi-pronged effort.
I think what really kind of concentrated our mind was the excellent article that Venus wrote in the Times.
It is a shame that the greatest tournament in tennis, which should be a positive symbol for the sport, has been tarnished.
This is the only Grand Slam where this occurs. Will my right honourable friend support his right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, in her efforts to persuade the Lawn Tennis Association to put this inequality right?
I remember getting a message to call the chairman of Wimbledon. He said, I know, we've had a lot of conversation about it, and we feel it's the right thing to do, so we've decided to pay equal prize money this year.
It'll be game, set, and matching money for the women players.
Venus is the only one since probably my generation that's had this drive to want to change.
This is a player at the peak of her career, deciding to spend meaningful time, put her own reputation at risk by campaigning for something she felt passionate about.
Venus versus injustices.
Venus versus the establishment.
Venus versus herself.
Now joining us is former UFC Bantamweight Champion Meisha Tate. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to go very back to the very beginning in your career, because when you first started fighting, there was no real path for women to make a living in MMA. Now women are headlining UFC cards and becoming household names. So what has it been like witnessing that shift?
It's been incredible to have that kind of perspective, to be honest. When I started, as you mentioned, women were fighting for breadcrumbs. We weren't taken serious at all. We were much of the kind of sideshow kick to any event. I still remember the time to this day when Dana White was like, women will never fight in the UFC. So I'm grateful that I have that perspective, being from the kind of the ground foundation of women's MMA. to the very top, fighting for a world championship in the UFC. Very grateful.
So it's crazy to think about, right? Because now the UFC has more pay equity than any other sport. So when you see things like what's happening in the WNBA or the U.S. women's national team, what goes through your mind?
I'm very grateful that my sport has caught up with the times as far as giving women equal opportunity to shine and equal opportunity to receive money. I mean, if we are putting butts in seats, I think we deserve to get paid for that. And I'm glad to see the UFC agrees.
So I want to talk a little bit about you because you retired for almost 5 years and you became a mother. So did your perspective shift at all during that time?
Oh, tremendously. Mostly on myself as a person. I retired because I didn't think that I had the desire and passion for the sport anymore. And then, I had my 2 children and I thought my life has never been more complete. So, what else do I have to offer? And the pandemic combined with that too kind of gave me this major incentive to want to come back and show the world what I can really be capable of.
Oh, I love those cute little faces. They're so adorable. So you're one of the pioneers of the sport. Your rivalry with Ronda Rousey really helped put women's MMA on the map for casual fans. If she came out of retirement, would you fight her?
I would love to. If she came out of retirement, I mean, it's impressive that she only was out for 4 months and she's already back doing her thing in professional wrestling. So, I mean, I guess nothing is really out of the question. I think I finally developed enough in my striking skill set and become a more well-rounded martial artist where I was still primarily a grappler. I'll never forget in that second fight, people were like, why did you try to take her down? You were beating her on the feet. And it's like, I don't know, that's what I do. Now that's not just what I do. Now I can fight in every area of the sport. So I think a trilogy fight, should it ever happen, would be a dream come true.
Knowing that you've grown in the sport in that way, what are some of your goals in the future for your career?
My goals in the future is to obtain a championship one more time before we hang it all the way up. I'm not new to this sport, so I think for me, time is of the essence. And I want to drop down to 125 pounds and give that a whirl.
Wow, I can't wait to see it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So I actually did not choose a career in sports. Career in sports kind of chose me. I joined ESPN in 2014. I was a business journalist at the time, but I was also posting a lot about football, and I wrote a personal essay about football, and some editors at ESPN, the magazine, contacted me and asked, hey, would you be interested in switching careers? Obviously, it was a life-changing, incredibly fortunate experience, but it's also something I try to remember a lot. When I think about growing female representation in sports media, I think about, hey, who is out there like me who maybe isn't working in sports but could and has the ability and the passion? And I think that's how we can ultimately continue raising our numbers.
Joining us now is 5-time Olympic medalist and 2-time world champion bobsledder Elana Meyers Taylor. And Elana, I'm excited to talk about you because you played softball in college, you grew up in Georgia, and then you became a bobsledder. How exactly did that transition work?
Yeah, so part of it is seeing is believing. I always wanted to be an Olympian, and in 2002, I saw Vanetta Flowers win an Olympic gold medal in bobsledding. And I grew up playing softball, wanted to be an Olympian in softball, and then didn't make the team. And so when I didn't make a softball team, I was looking for something else to transition to. And my parents actually saw bobsled on TV and said, hey, why don't you try this? And after seeing Vanetta Flowers win, I saw people like me being successful at sport. So I just Googled it, emailed the coach, and got invited to a tryout.
So the thing that's crazy about that is you just got invited to a tryout, but you are now the most decorated Black athlete in Winter Olympics history. So that's just a slight flex. What does that mean for you as a Black woman?
It's crazy surreal. It's one of those kind of things where in the moment I was so focused on sliding and winning the medals that I didn't realize it was even a thing. I had known Chiney Davis and how prolific his career was. So to be able to be up there with those great names, Chiney Davis, Vanetta Flowers, now Aaron Jackson, it's quite an amazing accomplishment. But it's also I also want to leave a legacy. I want more Black athletes, all athletes, to get into winter sport. And I want to show them that bobsled in particular and winter sport in general is for everyone.
I do want to ask you about that specifically because, you know, like you said, there's not a lot of Black athletes that are in the winter sports. Why do you think that is?
One of it is just location. You know, most of our sports are done in winter climates, and there's not a large percentage of the population that lives in winter sport. But also, there's a lot of barriers that we face getting into winter sport, whether it's discrimination just on the grassroots level, starting the sport, or in my case, you know, there's been a long stereotype that Black people can't drive bobsleds. And so even me getting into the front seat, I was one of the very few athletes to take on that task. And now you see more and more are going to be successful. But it definitely isn't without its challenges.
So obviously we're still in the middle of a pandemic and you had to give up your flag bearing responsibilities in Beijing because of a positive COVID test, but then you got to do the closing ceremony. So what was that experience like?
Oh my goodness. That was a huge honor. And for my teammates to recognize all that I had been through with the positive COVID test at the beginning, with my whole family testing positive, it was kind of surreal that they actually elected me to be able to have that honor in the closing ceremonies. And anytime you get to hoist the flag for your country, like, it's an incredible honor. And to do so at the Olympics, at the closing ceremony, the final celebration for Team USA, it was pretty cool.
You mentioned your entire family. This was your first Olympics competing as a mother. How much did that change you as an athlete and as an Olympian?
Whenever you have a child, your entire perspective changes. You know, whether I have a good day on the ice or a bad day on the ice, I still have responsibilities when I come home to my son, and he doesn't care. He loves me regardless. So in some regards, it changed my perspective. I wasn't as hard on myself, but at the same time, when I was on ice, I wanted to take full advantage of it. But it's definitely allowed me a lot more freedom as an athlete to just go out there and focus on what I have to do, because I know I have real responsibilities when I get home.
I love that so much. Congratulations on all your accomplishments.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
There are so many incredible women working behind the scenes at ESPN, including on this very show. Here are just a few of the ladies who make our shows possible.
Careful of those stones you're throwing, that's what keeps me going, going. I keep on turning dust to diamonds. I'll make sure that this rust keeps shining, no matter the price I pay. And I'll get back up and keep on fighting. I'll be the one to ride the lightning, through all the pressure and the pain. I turn dust to diamonds. I turn dust to diamonds.
Oh, I love that. I'm so in my feels. Okay, you've been hearing snippets of her song, Dust to Diamonds, throughout the entire show. We now welcome in the woman behind the music, Rapsody. Thank you so much for joining us. And watching that, do you get in your feels too?
I did, Christine. I was looking at hearing the song and watching the women, and it just makes me excited that I could create something that, you know, uplifts and supports the power of what strong women is.
Oh, I love it. It is definitely the soundtrack of this entire show. And your song names drops a ton of very powerful and successful women. You're such a great storyteller. What was the process of writing this song?
Man, actually, in the beginning, it was a record that I'd already had done. I did maybe a year before ESPN reached out. And when they told me about Title IX and, you know, what they wanted to accomplish with it, and they wanted to highlight some of the women in sports, you know, I'm a fan of creativity. So, you know, I was like, I'm going to take these women's names and I'm going to use them to help tell the story. You know, like Kristi Yamaguchi. I said I take a spin on everything like Kristi Yamaguchi, because when I think of her, I just see her on the ice spinning around. So, you know, it was just something, the hook was there. I just went back and tailored it to really represent, you know, women and Title IX and the history and celebration.
I love that so much. You described your 2019 album, Eve, as a love letter to Black women, and you named each song after your heroes. How have those heroes shaped your career?
Man, I feel like I'm an extension of all of them, right? You know, if they're the roots, you know, there's a branch or a leaf that I pull from them, like Serena Williams, you know, just her determination, her work ethic, her drive. Whoopi Goldberg, you know, that Color Purple is one of my favorite movies. So, you know, the spirit of what that represented to me. Nina Simone. Nina Simone was the soul. You know, she's from North Carolina. She was especially as an artist, where I'm unapologetic in who I am. So, you know, I just took inspired ways that, you know, the diamonds. I know there's so many African women, men and women, kids and the youth. And, you know, they kind of mirror each other. And what I wanted to accomplish with the album and both with this song is, you know, that we feed off of each other's energy, and everything that we give, you know, out to this world is a reflection for somebody else to see themselves in us.
I love that also you're mentioning a lot of athletes in your music. And I know that you played in the Celebrity All-Star Game and NBA All-Star Weekend. And I just wanted to know because, you know, when celebrities go out there and play basketball, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not so great. Did you grow up playing sports?
I did. I've been playing basketball since I was 7 years old. And my dad had taken my brother to tryouts, and we were so close. He said, I'm not playing if Marlena, which is my real name, my sister, isn't playing. So I jumped in it, and I ended up loving it. You know, music and basketball were my life. You know, so I played all the way up to high school. I thought I was going to play in college, but, you know, I didn't make that transition, but it's still, you know, one of my first loves right along with music. I love basketball.
That's good. Hip hop, just like music, or just like sports, excuse me, is a very male-dominated industry. How has that, you being able to infiltrate that, how hard has that been?
Man, you know, I love a good challenge. And one of the things that I can say that has made it more enjoyable for me is because I have a great support system of men who support me, right? It almost makes me think about the WNBA, right? And how much you have people like Kobe Bryant that supported them, Chris Paul, LeBron James. So I surrounded myself with a community that protected me, uplifted me, and I knew it was important. You know, anything worth doing is not going to be easy. But, you know, one thing I had to tell myself is remain who you are. And it's not really about gender for me. It's about my talent. But, you know, through my talent, people get to see that, yo, as a woman, she's just as ill as any man. So, you know, I had to approach it, you know, any obstacle where no matter what is put in front of me, if I can't break through that door, I'm going to go around the building and go up the roof and come down the chimney. So, you know, it's just, I can't stop at anything, and I'm going to work if I have to work 10 times harder to get where I need it to be. And that's just how I approach it. But it was easier for me because I had such an amazing support system. And I knew that I could define my own path. You know, I didn't have to take anybody else's route. I could, you know, cut my path through the woods if I needed to.
You said you're just as ill as any man, and I love that because in 2017, you became the first woman in 20 years to be nominated for Best Rap Album. Now, I'm going to just tell you something about myself. When I was in college, I did think I was going to be a rapper. Don't ask me to rap. It's not going to be great, but the future is female. What do you think the future of rap music is for women?
Man, we're already in the midst of it, right? Where it's kind of blurring those lines of, you know, the women are really killing it, you know, from all angles. I look at, you know, myself, Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, the Kaylee 47. There's so many dope women, and two behind the scenes, behind the Rock Nation, which Sherry Bryant is co-president of. So it's just good to see that, you know, women are really holding things by the reins, and they're saying like, yo, we're not taking, you know, you got to have a man to come through in the industry. Like, no. I did this, I built this. And, you know, women are taking their position at these companies and really speaking for themselves. And that's what I love is that, you know, with the help, too, of social media, we get to tell these stories. We get to see what happens behind the scenes. You know, we get to find our own community and show, like, again, like, we can do anything. And as you see, like, women are out rapping a lot of guys right now. You know, we're keeping it hot in hip hop. So that's the beauty of it, you know, the diversity, the support, you know, having a community of women too working together. That's so important. So, you know, we do so much more together than we do apart. And, you know, knowing that there's space for all of us to exist.
Well, the fact that we still have to remind people that women can still do what men do is kind of crazy, but you are certainly an example of that. Thank you so much, Rapsody, for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for watching Women Plus Sport presented by Adidas. Thank you to all the women who joined us and, of course, who touched this show today. Now, to play us out, here's Dust to Diamonds by Rapsody.
I turn dust to diamonds.
Turn a quarter to a quarter milli. Went from dark days into black. I ain't Lauryn Hill, but still the path I took was hella hilly. A queen within her palace. Every stone you threw, look what it built me. This for every baller that you caught. I hope you look to Billy. Gene King, my glove swing. I made them see stars and thrillers. Layla Ali ran the track like Flojo. Nailed me to the crosses. X Games, Kelly Clark's pipe down, made them do it. Arena screams Serena, this like Jesus music. Never seen nobody body like she bodied with that body. Jesus Christ, counting all the crosses. Diana Taurasi, hella nice. Veins filled with hella ice. So why I need the jury? I put a spin on everything. Yeah, I'm Christy Yamaguchi. I turn dust into diamonds and turn diamonds just like Dot. I'm Richard's son, but not enough. They still try to sock her price and never foot the bill. Though we defeated that twice, times twice. 4 on Abbey Road, it's what it feel like, soccer.
I keep on turning dust to